Support organizational change 3.4. This is one of my favorites because change can be extremely helpful in moving an organization to a state of excellence. And this is what PMI wants you to know. One, you got to assess organizational culture. Why? You got to ask yourself that question. Are we ready for this change? Or do we need a change in culture first? Do we need a change in thinking first? Two, evaluate the impact of organizational change to your project. And then you can determine the required actions. A lot of folks may not evaluate the impact of a project or evaluate the impact of change to a project. And that is what 3.4.2 and 3.4.3 urge you to do. 3.4.3 is what is the impact of the project to the organization? And from there, you'll have a better understanding of what the change needs to be effective and what the change could do. What the change could do if it is not done the right way. This is all about human behavior and understanding that first and getting buy-in from stakeholders regarding any change coming and getting those folks who are on the project as stakeholders to give you their full support. Minimize resistance, gain support. That's what you want ultimately. But in order to support organizational change, you know, the key word is organizational. We're not talking about changing plans or documents, no, or changing requirements or changing your product backlog. That's not what we're talking about here. Remember, this is from the business area. So we're thinking a lot more strategically at a higher level. In the world of Agile, as you can imagine, some of the changes we're looking for to enable Agile to work properly are going to require some organizational change. So think about it. I talked about mindset and behavior. Your organization may not be okay with the concept of experimentation, but it's up to the project manager, it's up to whoever is at the helm, be it a scrum master or an agile leader, to explain to them the psychology, the philosophy. Every sprint is an experiment. Every user story is an experiment. So it's built into the process. And this is meant to give people the understanding that there are guardrails set up, there are processes set up to help you. When and how do you know you're ready for change? Well, my buddy, my co-trainer Roy, he simply calls this a health assessment. So if you go back to the very first task, the very first enabler we looked at, you got to assess organizational culture. I know one of the things I love a lot about the Agile Practice Guide is the fact that PMI gives you some practical, tangible tools to use for this. And one of the tools that they give you to use for this, it's known as the Suitability filter. And this model that PMI has is a model where organizational and project attributes are assessed under three main categories. One is culture. Is there a supportive environment with buy-in? Is there trust? Two, team. Is a team a suitable size? Do its members have T-shaped skills and do they understand what exactly this is all about? Is there an access to business reps to be successful? Because you know, one of the tenets of Agile is we work daily with the customer. Are we able to do that? And regarding the project, the question is, are there high rates of change? Is incremental delivery even possible? How critical is the project? Now, this is an exercise I love to carry out with companies, with teams. And if your company is going through some valley of decision, so to speak, you need to get them to do this. There are many ways we facilitate these workshops, but at the end of the day, the company has a better understanding of where they are. So we assess team, culture, and project. I'm going to show you how we do this real quick here. So in assessing the team, the question of experience, where do they stand on a scale of 0 to 10, talking about experience, Do the team members have the necessary experience and access to business reps to be successful? If the answer is more no than yes, then they're going to be up here. If it's a no, you plot them there. Do they have access to customer stakeholders to collaborate, to work together? If the answer is a massive yes, then it's going to be down here somewhere. Regarding buy-in, if there's no buy-in for the approach of Agile, the approach of being nimble in thinking, and they seem somewhat resistant, then they're going to be somewhere there. In terms of trust, if they have trust, it's going to be there. If decision-making approaches are left to the team and it's something that is welcome, it's going to be towards that angle. Regarding delivery, if incremental delivery would massively help, like you need to release things on a regular basis, maybe on a weekly basis, then you're going to be down here towards the 0 point. And you can see the scale over here from 0 to 10. That's what we're following. Okay. Regarding criticality, it's a very, very, very critical project. And in fact, the PMI gives you ranges of scores, and the term criticality has from 1 to 10, 10 being could be loss of life on a massive scale, then it's going to be up here. If it's loss of life on a smaller scale, then it's towards the middle. What about change? Is the rate of change high? Well, if the rate of change is high, you plot that there. And the team size. If the team is like 200 plus, then they're going to be towards this zone. But if the team is somewhere towards 1 to 3, they're going to be closer to here. So this would be the kind of profile a company like this would plot. And from this, they would be able to deduce what their profile is. Now, just from observing at a high level what a company such as this one I'm describing would probably do is be hybrid. This shows hybridization would likely help this firm. And take a look here. You'll get something like that. So the one on the screen, this one right here that was here before I did this example one, that firm is one that will benefit from a whole lot more agile. But as you see this jutting out point here, that's an indicator that you got to be predictive to satisfy those. But there are some firms that will be so centered around the middle that it would make absolute sense to go more fully agile. But this shows that there are a lot of predictive influences, even though there are some nice agile possibilities. So you would need to hybridize. And as you can see, the interpretation of what we're doing is right here. It says clusters of values around the center of the chart indicate a good fit for agile approaches. Results around the outside indicate a predictive approach may be more suitable. And values in the middle portion between agile and predictive indicate a hybrid approach could work well. Now, the Agile Practice Guide goes into a lot more detail regarding this. And in the Agile Practice Guide, there is more information about how you could do this in a firm and a lot more information regarding case studies, if you will. So I want to urge you to open up your Agile Practice Guide. This is a very exciting piece in my mind. Not only have I used it for companies, but I truly believe that this is a good starting point for companies to begin the dialogue of hybridization. So if you are struggling in your firm, you need help with this topic, I want to urge you to reach out to Roy and I. Let us know that you're looking for help in this regard. We can facilitate one of these for you or your team. I would advise, though, because companies are very different, you definitely need representatives from all parts of the business. And as much as possible, try to have dialogue. This is not a magic button to say, oh, we need to be agile, or oh, we need to be predictive all the way, or oh, we need to be hybridized. No, it's a vehicle for teams to have discussions and to find out what the way forward could look like. Okay. Now, if you go to the Agile Practice Guide, page 127, you can see where this is talked about, where this is used. If you go to page 128, all the way on down, you can find the interpretation of these questions. Now, the PMI do say results predominantly in the hybrid zone indicate some combination of agile and predictive might work. They also say, however, it is also possible that an agile approach with some risk education, such as extra education and training, or extra validation and documentation rigor in the case of high criticality projects, may suffice. So, the way to blend the worlds of agile and predictive, they do need an expert eye. Okay. And that is where patience is needed. And that is where good understanding of both worlds are needed. All right. I would advise don't try this alone at home. Look for expert advice, look for expert help in things like this if you want to do them in your firm. All right. So, the area that I talked about, I just want to touch on the area of criticality. And the scale for criticality 10 is many lives lost, 1 is only time lost, and 5 on that scale is essential funds. Essential funds are lost. See, that's why it's a 5, but not loss of life. The actual radar, you could take a look. I'm quite excited the PMI made this available to people. It's on page 134. Take a look at that. And the case studies talked about on page 135, the radar chart looks at an online drug store project. And it's interesting in seeing how things spike out. And the commentary there is because of that spike, right? It says some projects are centered around the middle, but then spike out on one or two axes. These projects may be best solved with a hybrid approach. And then if you go to page 136, you get the full breakdown of how they did this. And it reads the project was to develop an online drugstore to sell cheaper Canadian prescription drugs to US customers. And it says, as shown, and I'm not showing you the figure, go check it out, X312, high levels of buy in and trust are evident for those who worked in an empowered way. The visual nature of the website make it easy to show new increments of functionality. You get it? So they took this, they employed it, and the approach was very helpful. There were high rates of change, and the team handled it well. And this was a good predictor that they were down the right track. The second example that you can see on the next page is a military messaging system. And for that one, you can see it looks even more on the outside than the example that I'm showing based on the random numbers I threw out. In this one, you can see it is all across the board predictive, probably best predictive, largely predictive. But it's not enough for you to just look at this big old shape and say, oh, that's predictive. No, you need to investigate why. Why are we not considering an agile approach? So there were many questions, as usual, that were answered. And one of the questions that was answered in the example is, why is there no agile buy-in? And the answer is, well, an agile approach was not being considered. Trust in the vendors was mixed, but generally respected. Decision making was not local, but was made by architecture and requirements committees. While elements of the design could be tested incrementally in a laboratory, they could not be gathered together for an end to end demonstration. Many lives were potentially at risk, so criticality was very high. So if you take a look at that PMBOK guide example, what you'll find, and I'm going to erase what I have up here, but what you'll find generally is something like this on the outskirts. A lot of the points were very much on that periphery outside. And that is why the first look at something like this, you're going to think, oh, yeah, this is definitely going to be predictive. But if you read the Agile Practice Guide, if you go further to the actual descriptions that PMI shares there, it says the project was large, with more than 300 people from one vendor side alone, but each role had many experienced practitioners. Finally, access to the business or customer was not possible, but contract analysts were available to ask specification questions, and they usually replied or asked clarifying questions within 10 days. Parts of the project could have been carved off and run as agile projects, but at the heart of the initiative was a single large project. See, so when you take a look at these points, you should also ask yourself, are there any opportunities here? Why is this data the way it is? You see, perhaps there needs to be dialogue, and that is exactly what this tool is meant to do. It's meant to get dialogue. It's meant to be a conversation piece. And people on the team, people in the company, they should jump in and they should discuss. So we can see two different types of companies, one that was more hybridized and one that immediately it looks, oh, this is going to be predictive all the way. However, when you look at the data, the question should be, why is the data like this? And is there any opportunity to do anything differently? Is there any opportunity to add value in an incremental fashion to get people what they need quicker, and so on? See. But when you take a look at this military project, requirements were locked down because changes impacted so many subcontract organizations. And that's understandable and that's okay. But the summary of it is Agile suitability filters are useful tools for identifying potential fits and gaps for Agile projects, but they should not be used as definitive inclusion or exclusion gates, but instead as topics of objective discussion with all interested parties. So I urge you as a professional, open up the Agile Practice Guide, not because you're taking the PMP exam alone, but because this suitability filter is a very, very cool piece in my mind for people who are thinking of the idea of, are we ripe for hybridization? And when you take a look at the information, you can ask yourself, why are we like this? Is is this as a result of some biases? Is this a cognitive bias? And maybe you realize people have no clue, you see, about Agile, and they just need education. And then there's a bigger opportunity to help them. So take a look at those suitability filters, and I hope this has really helped you to understand, because if you're going through some form of transformation or about to, which some of the questions on the exam will be like that, you want to start thinking about this stuff. So how do you assess an organization's culture? Practices, symbols, values, assumptions. All members of the organization understand these. Collectively, they define appropriate behavior within the organization. When you think about culture within a project management context, it could be complex because we're talking about people from all manner of fields, backgrounds, professions. Members of your team will typically have their own cultures and ways of working, may not be in harmony with one another. These cultural differences can either be positive or negative, depending on how they're managed. And it's important that PMs make themselves aware of these cultures on their projects. You also need to realize that these are EEFs, enterprise environmental factors. Get to know the team, do some research, find out what you can know about the team, and identify components of the organization's culture that are important for the project you're working on, and then be able to prepare a strategy for implementing change on their behalf. Some projects are very global in nature, and other projects are local in nature. So it's your job as project manager to understand that. When we talk about organizational factors, some organizational factors are as follows: organizational culture, resistance, reluctance of the organization to change, teamwork, degree of leadership in support of the change, organizational communications, organization system and process, and organizational structure. These are things that you want to be thinking about as part of that task as a project manager. Okay. So when we take a look at the task overall, the task is supporting organizational change, assess organizational culture, evaluate the impact of organizational change to the project, determine required actions, and then evaluate the impact of the project to the organization and determine required actions. So that is the final, the very, very, very last of the tasks in the PMP exam content outline. My question to you is, do you have questions? Well, if you have questions, you know very well, I want to know about your questions. So I want you to post them in the comments below, and I'll be more than happy to give you some answers. If you're getting ready for the PMP exam and you're wondering, maybe even the CAPM exam, and you're wondering, well, how am I going to study? How am I going to get support? Well, there is a website that you need to go to, and it's our home website. It's called praizion.com, Praizion.com. When you get to praizion.com, I want you to check out the vehicles that we have to help you, to add value to you, to train you. And one of the vehicles is the Project Management Masterclass. It's also accessible from projectmanagementmasterclass.com. And if you go to the website here, you can see we've got training coming up. We have training all the time. Click on that link, check out the training that we've got, the next round of training that we've got. Sign up for it. And if you're already a PMP and you're looking for some help for your exam, well, whatever the exam might be, maybe what you need is not PMP exam training. Maybe what you need to help you, to mentor you, to coach you is a vehicle that we call the Project Leadership Institute. And if you go to that page there for the Project Leadership Institute, you can see that we have training, coaching, mentoring to help people pass the exam. As you can see that they're working on, that is not PMP, because you need more support. So if you're taking more of the advanced exams like the RMP exam, the Risk Management Professional exam, while not offering you training full blown, we could offer you mentoring to help you get there. If you're taking an exam such as the SP exam, the Scheduling Professional exam, or the ACP exam, or any of your aspirations as a professional, you want to be in a program like this that keeps driving you towards your goals. All right, this starts March 27th, and we've got a keynote from my mentor, leadership guru, John C. Maxwell. I want to implore you, if you're really looking to grow in this world of project management, go on down there, take a look at the offerings we've got, and it'll be a pleasure to have you as one of our mentees. You take care and speak to you soon.